clean her up, sauce her up, throw them on.
In regards to the 2JZ being interference or non-interference, that is all depending on whether you have the thick head gasket like the twin turbo or the thin head gasket like the NA. The NA is interference, and then the GTE is non-interference. Because the head gasket is so much thicker, that's going to give you that additional clearance for the valves to the pistons in the event that the timing belt snaps. Just to set the record straight from here on out.
Just to further explain the process that I'm doing here to find top dead center, they make this little bolt with a screw in it, so it's the same size as your spark plugs. You just use your spark plug socket. So that little set screw moves individually, or independently I should say, that nut. So that little screw you want to back off all the way, screw in the nut. Make sure you're actually not. You could reference your last piston, or whichever piston would be in the same position as one, to see if you're actually at the top or not. So I went down with the first piston just a little bit, put that screw in there, put it down just a tad, started rotating this until it stopped, marked it. That's your degree wheel right there, so -1, and then I went the other direction and it stopped at -19. So that's an 18-degree difference in between, so half of 18 is 9. Take that little set screw out, set my degree to 10 degrees, up to that safety cable, and then that will be my true top dead center. So I took each cap, cleaned them, put the red line assembly lube on each journal surface, and then I just put some engine oil on the old bolts. Both cams are on, all torqued down. Now I'm going to mess with the oil seal. Hopefully it's not that much of a pain in the neck. Hopefully I don't slice it up. I think you're supposed to be putting it on before. So once I put the oil seal on, put both of the tangs on the camshaft here and here to 12 o'clock position. Loosen those 12 bolts until they turn by hand and retighten in several passes, and then turn at 120 degrees, so a third of the revolution. Loosen those 8 bolts right there until they're turned by hand, and then retighten, and then do the last sequence of 120, loosen those 4, and then retighten them. And then do your valve lash, and then install the timing belt cover. Hopefully that lash is good. Alright, just going to double check. I don't have that tool per the manual, so I'm just going to use this block of wood. Go all the way around, make sure as far as it can be. Make sure I get as much wood shavings as I can into the fucking cam. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so the head and cams are all torqued down. Now I'm going to do the actual break-in process, the legitimate torque sequence on this. So when the manual tells you to, please dowels on each. The exhaust and the intake need to be at a 12 o'clock position. But for exhaust, wants you to loosen up these 4 here, and then these 2 in the back, loosen them up till you turn them by hand, and then retorque them. For the intake, I want you to do 4 here, and then these 2. They can move them by hand, retorque, retighten in several passes. If you have 32 millimeter, that would be extremely beneficial, because that's what this one, 31 or 32, 31. You can actually tell someone that's already been here doing this stuff. See that? On a nicked area. So just don't do what they did. The main benefit of this engine, probably because it's belt driven instead of chain driven, so belts, it changes on a more frequent interval than you will chain. But the 2JZ is a non-interference engine. What that means is that I can, even with these pistons up, especially number 1 and number 6 at top dead center, I can rotate these cam lobes down, pushing our valves down for the intake, and you're not going to interfere with the piston. So in the event that a belt snaps and the pistons are still moving, because say for example your car is driving down the street, it's not going to come in contact with the camshaft, or it's not going to come in contact with your valves and then completely destroy your engine. So there's a chance that you can just replace your timing belt and then you're good to go. One of the many perks of this engine. Okay, update. Crescent wrench doesn't necessarily fit between these channels. In lieu of that, so I'm just going to throw the gear on. So
With the 2JZ, the absolutely only way to make them non-interference is to put a thicker head gasket on like I did from the GTE motor. So I'm swapping out that O-ring and the VVTi cam gear. There's another cat on YouTube that did an amazing video and breakdown on the whole process. I'll leave that up to him.
Now I'm going to rotate all these down 120 degrees, so 1/3 of the way, each one. You can tell by the dowel location, and then break a couple more, retorque. For this, I want you to make sure that these little notches in your cam gears are pointing at 12 o'clock. That way you can inspect for exhaust 1, 3, and 5. Cylinders, cam lobes, and then for your intake 1, 2, and 4. Throw your feeler gauge in the intake and exhaust cold clearance, because this thing is 40 degrees in here. For exhaust, I'm going to be aiming for 10 to 14 thousandths, and then intake will be 6 to 10 thousandths. And I know I'm supposed to have the plate on, but I'm just having these on here so I can rotate it. This is hoping that I have all my buckets in the according spot. Otherwise, I'll have to shim them all again. Okay, rotate. Check again. Okay, now it's telling me to, again, this is assuming I have my crankshaft pulley on and my timing belt on and everything. So it wants me to rotate the crankshaft 360, so 1 revolution, so your timing degree marking is at 0. Really all that's going to be doing is moving these half revolutions, because these move half the speed as the crankshaft, so I'm just going to point these notches down, both of them, and then make sure 2, 4, and 6 for exhaust, and 3, 5, and 6 for intake. Cam lobes are at least pointing up. That way I can fit my feeler gauge underneath the bucket, take the proper measurement. Thankfully, I have installed all the buckets accordingly in the order whenever I pulled them out, so my valve clearances are good.
I ended up taking those cam gears back off and that timing belt cover because I wanted to make sure that timing belt cover, those 4 little bolts, had some blue Loctite on them.
While I'm at it, I'm going to throw the water pump on. Now once we put on this cover, I'm going to clean it up. Throw this saucy bitch up. So I've been going back and forth with the book. I believe I fully understand what they're trying to get at here. When they told me to set up crankshaft timing pulley, they wanted me to install it just like that and match up that divot with that dimple on your oil pump. So then this is at I believe it would be like at 20 degree or something like that. And then up here, they want you to line up all of the dimples on your camshafts with the timing mark on the cover itself. Doing that, please correct me if I'm wrong. These are non-interference engines, of course, but this eliminates entirely any type of interference whatsoever. Because if you look at each one of these cam lobes, it seems like none of them are fully down. Like this one is at the very end of its duration here. Same goes for all that. So this eliminates, because if you were to set up all these dimples, if you were actually to set up where it should be properly, because once I get the belt on, you want to line this up perfectly. So get your crankshaft pulley on, set that to 0, and then these markings should line up with here for both the intake and exhaust cams. This is just the first time that I've ever done dual override cam engine, so new for me. I believe that's it. Dimple and divot, and this. Okay, divot lined up with that. So whenever I rotate this, should line up perfect. So set that Woodruff key in that crankshaft in there to 12 o'clock. Should line up. There you go, right there. That's how you label shit. Crankshaft set to 0. What you're looking for, make sure that's at 0. That notch right there, pointing to that mark right there. The back plate, same with this back plate. It might be a VVTi thing. Just make sure that because this thing will go 30 degrees either way. Just to make sure that guy's aligned and stuff. I'm not fairly certain. Like I said, if you guys have done like a 2JZ motor before, please let me know how you put your timing belt on. Either way, per the manual, that's good to go. So let's get in there. Alright, so today I'm going to be throwing on that super damper. That hub assembly is a pressed on fit. So I'm boiling the hub right now. I'll show the whole process. Okay, so put some anti-seize on it. Not too much, just enough, just so it doesn't well down there. Okay, and I put 2 bolts in the crank back there, flywheel bolts, and a pry bar in between, so to stop it from rotating. So whenever I get it, I'm gonna try to pull it in with the actual bolts and washer itself. There she is, all in her glory. Alright, so the torque for the bolt itself is 243 foot-pound. That's a lot. Now let's see the interesting stuff. Looks like I sunk it on as much as I could. These breaker bars are in contact with these nuts and they're not. So I'm going to rotate it at the proper location. So the back of my pry bar is sitting up against the 2 nuts that I put on the opposite ends, because you got the 8 bolt. And I just put 2 nuts back there like that. So there, got the 2 bolts. Pry bar going in between the 2 bolts here. See the bolt there. Okay, pry bar going in between that. And then the one that's underneath there. Okay, there you go. Here's your torque. So yeah, here's the pry bar. Told you there's a lot of stretch. It's weak sauce, little pry bar, turning the bitch into a hockey stick. I'm gonna install the rest of the damper. When you're installing your damper, your offset hole is right here. Little dimple. There's a little dimple right there. Okay? And it wants you to line it up with the little dimple right here. So that's where that goes. There it is in all of its glory. Always wanted one of these guys. Finally got it. Pretty damn cool if you ask me. So I'm not necessarily how the degree markings work, because they obviously don't line up. Top dead center. Nowhere near that. Here's a whole 180 off there. Same with that. So time for the water pump pulley. Yep, water pump pulley, idler pulley, and alternator. All right, so I'm going to tap my fuel rail, or it's a return system. Currently it's returnless. So I'm going to tap this to the same thread pitch and everything as that, which is, thankfully I had this laying around, strangely enough. M12 by 1.25. So it's the same thread pitch as this. So easy enough.
Basically, this is going to conclude my video series for the 2J build. Thanks so much for watching. Do not follow this to the T. This is not a step-by-step for anyone to follow. This is just entertainment shit, just to show that engine building is not that crazy to do. Just you could do it in your own garage. But yeah, my other videos have shown the exhaust manifold and intake manifold on. That's just a mock-up. That's not a final installation. I'm going to do that once the engine is actually in the bay. Uh, I've been making some headway with the car itself and getting everything facilitated for the actual engine installation. Once the engine is installed, I'm going to give you another breakdown of where I'm at. And thanks for watching, everyone. I definitely appreciate all the new subs. Stick around, more to come.